And I think it's sad for those who are left behind. I had an experience many years ago with a cousin who had committed suicide. And not long after he committed suicide, he came to me. He came to me in an amazing experience in a room in my mom's house. He basically showed up in the room, not as a physical person, but as light. And I just intuitively knew it was him. And I was told to tell his mother that he's in a better place. So the next morning was Sunday. My mom, of course, was at a church. My father was at his church, which was a golf course. And I was in my mom's house, and I walked out, and my aunt was sitting in the kitchen. She was down just at the beach, getting away from and having a rest and kind of figuring out this whole thing and being in her grief, of course, about her son. And I sat down and I said, how do you broach this subject? So I started talking about auras. And then she told me some spiritual experiences she had while she was in Peru. And so it kind of gave me an inroad to actually talk to her about what was going on and what I had just experienced with her son. And I said to her, I saw Carlos last night. And my aunt, before I could say anything else, said, is he in a better place? She literally answered the question, or asked the question that he had answered the night before. When someone crosses over with suicide, it is most harmful for the people who are left behind. Because here in the physical world, we're experiencing our fears and anxieties and our separation from love. And when someone we love crosses over, it's harmful. We're afraid of not having their love, or we're afraid that we didn't love them enough to see their struggles. For those who've crossed over, it's a very different experience, because those who've committed suicide never were able to make this world work, never were able to make this physical illusion where we have to deal with our fears and anxieties and the illusion of death. Here in the valley of the shadow of death, the illusion of death, the shadow of death. Some people just have a hard time being able to do that or live into that experience or handle that experience. And sometimes that level of fear is just too overwhelming. So they go home. And what happens is when they cross back over, they have full awareness, as are the people who've committed suicide as well. So sometimes they leave here and they cross there, and it's such a relief for them. The interesting thing about that statement is when we all cross over, we realize what a relief it is, because you're here experiencing fears and anxieties and separations, so that you can go back and have that awareness of that, what pure love really is. And when you look at someone who's down here in such an emotional, fear-based state, and suddenly they have the opportunity to understand that massive depth of fear was such a counterpoint to the beauty of love, that they really truly come to know and understand love more fully because of that experience. But the people who are left behind, who didn't struggle like they did, they're learning love in a different way, and they're experiencing that feeling of giving and receiving love in a different way. The people who commit suicide come to a point in their life where they don't think they can, and so by going across, they're relieving themselves. Now, I had a cousin who, when my other cousin committed suicide, got really mad. She says, that's a selfish act. That's a selfish act. Well, yeah, it is a selfish act. They couldn't see past themselves because of their fears and their anxieties. The anger was about their own fears and their anxieties. And any negative emotion has a fear associated with it. You know, he was probably afraid of what, you know, how his aunt was going to be or how his cousins were going to be, you know, and so he got mad and said it was a selfish, and he said terrible things about my cousin. But the reality of it is my cousin couldn't see past it. He couldn't see a way out. And that became very obvious because in his suicide note, there was so much love in it for his family because he committed suicide in the parking lot of a police station so his family wouldn't find him. He didn't want them to find him. He also was like, I don't know how I'm going to get out of debt. You know, I'm so in debt and all this stuff and all, you know, horrible things. Life is terrible. And when they went through his possessions, he had a collection of comic books that would have easily paid off all his debts in one fell swoop. But he couldn't see it because he was lost in that fear and that anxiety. And, you know, when he crossed over, he ended up being relieved of all that fear and that anxiety. So, yeah, it was sad that he lived a physical life based in fears and anxieties, but I'm so grateful he has a chance to rest from that experience. It was a relief. I'm also so glad, being someone who has crossed over 3 separate times, I'm also so glad that I know full well that there is no judgment on the other side. There's only love and embracing. And so I know full well that this person, my cousin, who was so struggling in their mind, crossed over and experienced a love that let all that fear and anxiety go. Because that's what happens. It all goes away, and you become embraced in that love. And so I wanted to make this video because a lot of people who have loved ones who commit suicide buy into the religious constructs that you're going to burn in hell if you commit suicide, you're committing a sin if you're